Hi everyone, and welcome to another Diploma Insights online DP Psychology workshop. Throughout the month of August, there will be 4 free online workshops, all designed to increase your skills and confidence and give you valuable insights into the DP Psychology course. Each week, there will be a workshop around a different theme, and all you need to do to access the workshops is watch the video on this YouTube channel and then complete a short online task. This workshop will focus on paper 3, which is only a paper that high-level students will sit. However, the skills that are involved in answering the questions in paper 3 are still very relevant for all psychology students, SL and HL in paper 1 and paper 2. You've learnt a lot of research and been able to critically consider the approaches to research that the researchers took when they did their studies is a really useful skill for critical thinking. This workshop is going to share 5 top tips with you in relation to paper 3. Paper 3 is a 1-hour paper and will contain 3 questions which you must answer all of them. You will be provided with a stimulus, a study that you haven't learnt about before. This stimulus should be read very carefully and all the questions will link to it. And therefore the first top tip is to make sure that all your responses link to the stimulus provided. Top tip 2 relates to question 1. Question 1 has 3 sections, A, B and C, and you are guaranteed to be asked all sections of question 1 in your exam paper, paper 3. So the best thing you can do is practice these questions as much as you can before you sit the actual paper 3. When you're learning about studies in class, have these 3 questions in your mind and try and answer them. So even throughout paper 1 and paper 2, as you're learning new research, think about these 3 questions and try to answer them in relation to the new studies that you cover. Top tip 3 links to question 1, A and B. As you can see in both of these questions, you're being asked to outline and describe 2 characteristics. To make sure you gain the full marks possible, you should clearly identify the 2 different characteristics. So, structure your responses with sentence starters such as one characteristic is, and then clearly identify the second characteristic as a separate one from the first one by starting that sentence with another characteristic is or a second characteristic is. Top tip 4 relates to the last section of question 1. In this section, you're asked to give an alternative or additional research method that could be used instead of the one that was provided to you in the stimulus. So there's clearly a choice that has to be made here. So you should not be suggesting an alternative and an additional. You need to make a decision which one you're going to provide an answer to. And remember, you have to justify that choice. Top tip would be that if the stimulus provided to you was a lab experiment, you should never suggest that a field experiment or a natural experiment should be an appropriate alternative or additional method. At the end of the day, they all come under the same method of experiments. So, if your stimulus is in any way an experiment, do not suggest that another type of experiment would be a good alternative or additional research method. The same really would apply for interviews as well. If the stimulus given to you is a semi-structured interview, it'd be really quite hard to justify why you should do another type of interview. So try to go for a method that is really different to the original one that's been provided to you in the stimulus you read. Finally, top tip 5 links to question 2. Question 2 will definitely appear in your paper 3. However, there are 2 possible options, so you don't know which one you will get. They're both about ethics, but they are both very different questions. Both of them will be marked out of 6 though, And if you look at the mark scheme, you can clearly see that 3 marks will be awarded for the first part of the question and 3 marks will be awarded for the second part of the question. So for example, in the first one, which asks you to describe the ethical considerations that were applied in the study, only a maximum of 3 marks can be obtained for this. So you should be trying to identify 3 ethical considerations that were mentioned in the stimulus. The other 3 marks will come from further ethical considerations that you think could or should have been applied. So it's 1 mark for each ethical consideration that you identify from the study, and you should aim to identify 3. And the further 3 marks will come from identifying further possible ethical considerations that you think could or should have been applied, but they weren't mentioned in the stimulus. The second ethical question is a little bit trickier, and it doesn't ask the same as the first question. Ethical considerations when you report results and when you apply the findings of studies is something that you need to think about after you've finished your experiment or your study. So for example, if I've gathered data, it's not a matter that I send my participants home and ethically I have no more obligations. I have ethical obligations and considerations to take with regards to reporting my results and thinking about how those results can be used and applied. That's something, again, I would encourage you to start thinking about with regards to research that you're learning about in your course. Think about the ethics involved with reporting the results to the wider public and how the results can be applied. As a researcher, you do have an ethical obligation to take these things into consideration. There are 5 top tips for paper 3. Of course, there is also one last question that will appear on your paper 3 exam, and that's question 3. You can see on the screen that there are 3 possible questions that will appear in your paper 3 exam in the question 3. They're each worth 9 marks, and one of the 3 questions will be on your paper. Rather than go into detail about all the 3 questions, please feel free to email us, and we're more than happy to provide you support with these questions. If you'd like to have a go at the online activity now, you'll find the link to the online activity in the description of this video on YouTube. Thanks again, and hope to see you next week.